Okay, grade 9s. We're going to do Pythagoras theorem. Now, some or all of you will have seen Pythagoras theorem at some point. Now, just as a refresher, what's Pythagoras used for? Pythagoras is used to find a missing side of a right triangle, and by right, obviously I mean has a 90-degree angle in it. Okay, to find a missing side of a right triangle, if you know, ooh, that was wild. If you know, where is that? There we go. If you know two other sides. Good. Okay, what's it look like? Well, if we draw a right triangle, and there's our 90-degree angle, our hypotenuse, okay, the hypotenuse, we always know that that's our hypotenuse, okay, because it's the side opposite of our 90-degree angle. In the theorem, Pythagoras theorem, we always call our hypotenuse C, no matter what the letters are, okay, because Pythagoras theorem looks like this. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. And some people might just say the hypotenuse squared, something like that, is equal to A squared plus B squared. Now, I don't ever say hypotenuse squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. I like using C squared equals A squared plus B squared. Okay? And A and B doesn't really matter. I mean, you can call this side A and this side B for all intents and purposes. Okay? So we're gonna do an example here real quick and see how it can be used. So I'm gonna switch the page over here, just like so. All right. Well, let me erase this. Okay. And there's really only two types of Pythagoras questions I can give you. And yes, some of you are gonna struggle with this, but you shouldn't have too much problems with it. If we do an example and I say find the missing side X. Okay, so I'm going to label some side X. And I draw a picture for you like this. And it's a right triangle. And I call this side 5, this side 7. And I say, okay, what's X? Well, we're going to do some steps before we go and solve this question. And I'm going to put the steps right below this triangle so you've got them. So the steps look like this. Steps. Step 1. Label your hypotenuse C. That's the most important side in all of Pythagoras. Like I said earlier, A and B doesn't matter. I don't care if you call side 7A and side 5B, okay, or side 5A and side 7A. As long as you label your hypotenuse correctly, you're on the right track, okay? So label your hypotenuse C. Step 2. Substitute values into Pythagoras. Boy, this green is a bright green. So substitute your values into Pythagoras. 3. Simplify and solve for unknown variable. Because it might be side A or side B, whatever it is you're looking for. Okay, so I'm going to move back on up here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label my hypotenuse C. There it is. I've labeled C. That's the most important thing. After that, I can label this A and this B, just so we know where to put the numbers, okay? Because if you don't know how to substitute, and this goes back to Unit 2, evaluating, where we substitute and evaluate, okay? So now, label hypotenuse C. Step 2 says substitute values in Pythagoras. So I'm going to write out Pythagoras again. C squared equals A squared plus B squared, like so. I'm going to substitute the proper things in. So side C is our x. So I'm going to put x into C equals. Now side A we're saying is 7. So I'm going to plug 7 in to side A. Plus, we said the 5 is side B, so 5 squared. Alright, so x squared equals 7 squared. 7 squared is actually 7 times 7, because the 2 tells us to multiply the 7 by, you guys know that from powers and exponents, is 49. Plus 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25. Okay, so x squared equals 49 plus 25 is 74. Now, we're trying to simplify and solve this. Now, we've simplified it, but we haven't really solved for it yet, because we're looking for x, but because it's squared, there's a little trick we do to get rid of squares. It'd be the same if it was a cube. We would do something to that, and the whole works to get rid of that. And some of you know, in order to get rid of the square, I have to square root it, and that cancels out that square. So when I square root 74, and this is where, yes, trig unit, you're allowed to use calculators, you get 8.6. So if we go over here, x equals 8.6. There's our answer. Okay? So I guess at the end, 3 should say simplify and solve for the unknown variable, and maybe watch the square root at the end. Something like that. Okay? Alright, we're going to do one more example. Okay, so the first type, obviously we found the hypotenuse. Now that's the easiest type of question using Pythagoras. The only other type of question I can really give you is where we're finding a side that's not the hypotenuse. So if I draw a right triangle like this, and we're looking for x is right there now, and I say this is 14, and this side up here is, I don't know, let's say 8, and the question says find missing side x. Same question, just a different triangle. Now I gotta ask myself, okay, Pythagoras is used to find a missing side when I know two sides. Okay, we know two sides. We know 14 and we know 8. Okay, that's good. So I can use Pythagoras right now. So I'm going to write Pythagoras down. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. Step 1 says label the hypotenuse C. Well, my hypotenuse, remember, is the side opposite the 90 degrees, so I say that's C. Does it matter the other two sides? No. So I'm going to call this A and this B. And again, it doesn't matter. You can call the side 8A and the x B. It doesn't really matter. Okay? But it matters now where you substitute. So I'm going to substitute the values into Pythagoras. So my C, we said, was equal to 14. So I'm going to plug in 14 into where the C is. C squared. Now it's important that you know how to substitute back in properly. Is equal to A. Well, our side A is x. That's our missing variable. That's our unknown. We don't know what that side is. Plus, I'm going to substitute B in properly, and we said B was 8, so 8 squared. Well, I'm going to go through this and solve it no different than what we've been doing the entire linear relations unit, okay, and solving variables. So I do 14 squared because if we remember BEDMAS, we do exponents first and all that stuff. So I get 196 is equal to x squared plus 8 squared is 64. Okay, because 14 is 14 is 196. X squared we can't do anything with yet until the very end. We know what we got to do when we get there. 8 squared is 64. Well, what am I going to do now to isolate the x squared? Well, most of you have already got it in your head. I'm going to subtract the 64 from one side to the other, because that's going to make 64 minus 64 is a 0. It's gone. So now, x squared equals 196 minus 64, 132. Well, remember, this isn't what we're looking for. X squared isn't what we're looking for. It says find the missing side, x. So to get x, because here it is, x times x is x squared. So if I square rooted x squared, what did we multiply by twice to get x squared? X. So I'm going to square root it. That cancels the square and the square root. I'm left with x. And if I square root 132, I get 11.5. And I'm going to round correctly, because if I don't, man, am I going to get in trouble. So 11.5. So this is the only other type of Pythagoras question I can actually give you. It's where we're not finding the hypotenuse. So that's two examples. I know Mrs. Biden will be able to help you for sure with this stuff, because she's the pro that probably taught me how to do it. So good luck.